Good evening, lovely spirits. It's the wise servant here, Mr. Solace. Now, today I want to do this very interesting video called, What is a Gentile? But before I get into the video, I want to show y'all my coin. It's a very interesting coin. Very interesting. It says, one wish. It says, good for 90 days, redeemable for one wish. Place in water to activate. By activating coin, you agree to terms of use. One wish per holder. See reverse side for restrictions. Offer only valid for this dimension. Allow 3 lunar cycles for processing. Only wishes for others are valid. All wishes are transferable. Limits do not apply. Side effects may include compassion. It's a very weird coin, and it's solid. It got a lot of weight on it. Again, it's a deep thing. If anyone knows what this coin is, inbox me, let me know, and I'll let you know how I got my hands on it, because it's very intriguing. Now, I want to do this video called, What is a Gentile? And this is a very interesting video. The word Gentile. This has to do with the Bible, the Torah. This word is used in the Hebrew text, Gentile. Now, when you're dealing with scholarship, this word, Gentile, is up for heavy discussion because scholars don't truly know what it means, being as though we don't have that word in our vocabulary today. We don't use the word Gentile. So they're not sure what the ancients meant by that word, Gentile. Some people believe that it's referring to white people, Gentiles. Other scholars believe that it's referring to anyone who was not a Hebrew. And it's a deep thing I want y'all to grasp, because they're both wrong and they're both right. It's an interesting thing. See, what a Gentile is a white person. But the reason they call them a Gentile is because they're no longer a giant. See, you have to remember the Bible is talking about giants. They referred to them as Nephilim when they first came, and then they had sons and daughters and they became giants. So the Bible is about giants. So when you see the word Gentile, this is referring to white people, but not necessarily as a nationality. They called them Gentiles because they were basically the remnants of the giants, meaning they were the giants if the giants were men's size. Because you have to remember, the giants were white. They were albino. So white people over the course of the giants or the Nephilim reproducing with one another. This is how you get white people. So you figure the Nephilim came. Now, these are beings from another world, but they came here. This is the Bible text. They came here. Now you have to grasp, these Nephilim, they were humanoid or human-like, but they were very, very tall. Their genetic makeup was different. They were albino, red eyes, maybe purple eyes, platinum blonde or white hair. They were albinos. Then the regular men of this planet were all dark-skinned. Not black, but you know, my complexion, a little darker, a little lighter, but people of color. Now, when those albinos begin to mix and mingle in with the people, you begin to get giants. Now, when these giants begin to mix and mingle back in with the people and amongst themselves, you get lesser giants. And it continues over generation after generation. They keep reproducing with man until you get lesser and lesser giants, all the way till you get white people, which are giants who have completely been turned into man because of breeding. So you have to grasp, it's a deep thing. This is how white people surfaced from all the mixed breeding, and the Bible is breaking this down. This is why if someone had leprosy or they were an albino in the Bible, they were cast out of the village because they viewed it from the perspective of the giants. They were having quarrels with these beings. These beings were ruling over men, teaching men the arts and crafts of the metals and how to build in society, in a system like the way we live. And these giant beings were teaching them this. So this is why they felt some kind of way towards them. It's a deep thing. Now, over time of the giants reproducing in with man, you get all different kinds. White people with black hair, you get white people with blonde hair, etc., etc. But this is how you get them, and this is where that word Gentile comes from. Because they're no longer giants, but they're still them. They're the remnants of them, watered down by man from reproducing. So it's a deep thing, and they still have the same nature. This is how you know what I speak is truth, and this has nothing to do with racism. No problem with white people, but this is just truth. This is what the Bible is saying. When I say this is truth, according to the Bible, because people don't read the Bible accurately, but this is what the Bible is saying, that white people are the remnants of the giants. And they stopped referring to the giants as giants because they were no longer big and tall anymore. They mixed breeded in so much they were men's size, so they just called them Gentiles. Then it got to the point where even men, like men my complexion, they had the giant's blood within them too. Just like the Native Americans of this land and white people came. Now all the black people on this land, they got white man's blood in them. So this is how it was in ancient times. You knew who was the remnants of the giants, which was the white people. So they knew they were the giants. It was undeniable. Their skin complexion. So they knew them. But then you had others who may not have been light-skinned, but they had a lot of the giant's blood within them. Like black people on American soil, they have a lot of white man's blood in them. They live in the same manner as the white man. So this is how the Hebrews viewed those that weren't necessarily white, but they had the giant's blood. They viewed them as one and the same. They had the same nature. They lived in the same manner. They lived in the cities the way they lived, in the system, and all that crazy stuff. So they didn't just refer to white men as Gentiles, but they began to refer to whoever was kind of blended in. This is how that word became, so that you didn't lose sight that they were the giants of old, men of renown. So they referred to white men as the Gentiles. Now, what's the deep thing? People have to understand what the Bible is about, because a lot of people read the Bible with the perspective that has already been placed in their mind, so they really don't pick up the Bible and read it. Then a lot of people skip over the genealogy breakdown when they say Lamech begot Noah and so on and so forth, and we tend to skip over that because the names are confusing and we don't really know what they're saying anyway. But that is the most important part. That is where all the knowledge is. That is what tells you how things spread out and begin to split off. But it's a deep thing. The Bible is basically a book about mankind on earth. Earth is created. Mankind is created in all the things of this earth. Then giant beings from another world came here, and they basically ruled over men, putting them under their system where they build up the land and they basically pay man with what's produced by the earth freely. They're basically making the men work for it. The men think these giants are gods, and they worship them because they have knowledge that they don't. They're teaching them things they don't know otherwise. And when they see the results of the things they're teaching them, it's amazing to them. So they're viewing the giants as gods. Now, over time, the giants begin to mix and mingle in with people, becoming basically now natives to the planet. So the first set of giants that came, they weren't natives, but their offspring were, because they were born here and they were half human. Even though they were giants, they were native to the land. And then they continuously mixed and mingled in until they begin to get smaller and smaller. Now, during all this time, you have a nation of people called the Hebrew Israelites, or the Israelites. And these people are a special people because they became those who begin to slay the giants. They begin to rid the earth of the giants. So this is why, when you're reading the Hebrew text, this is why they have a history. Everyone has their own special history in their contributions to the earth. Chinese, Japanese, all different nationalities have their history and their deeds to the life. Now, Hebrews are special because they are the nation of people that begin to rid the earth of the giants. And the reason they did this is because they didn't have a home of their own. The giants pretty much took all the land up and began to build cities and slave out men. So all these different cities you hear, like Sumeria and ancient Egypt, these are all cities governed by the giants. This is why they have those big structures and things like this. This is how you know wherever the Nephilim or the giants were. These are their cities, the ancient giants, and the people that mixed and mingled and lived with them. So the Bible is basically about the history of man on earth and how giants came and basically began to rule over them. And then this is where you get all the gods and lords talk. And it's a deep thing y'all have to grasp. Because no nationality of people has anything in their culture or their history about gods and lords reigning supreme over them in the life. No other nationality has this. Until white people mix and mingle with the nation. Then you begin to see gods and lords. So when they find these little islands out here and they find these little native people who have been native to the island for 30,000 years, they still discovering things like this now. Those black people or those dark-skinned people that they find on them islands, because you never find white people on these islands. They discover islands every day with people that inhabit them, that are natives to the land. They are the aborigines to the land. And it's a deep thing, because they're dark in flesh, and they don't know nothing about no gods and none of that. They know the life provides. And if you give and receive to the life will give back to you, and so on and so forth. And this is how their culture is. Then white people come along and they teach them gods and lords. And it's a deep thing, because if you go to white people's history, see, we have all the questions in the world about what are the giants? Where did white people come from? Etc., etc. But we look for the answers in the texts and things we believe in. Mind you, if you want to know about the giants and white people, you have to look in their history. Now, when you're dealing with their history, you're talking about Greeks and the Norse. And when you read these histories, this is where you find gods and lords. In all the other black civilizations, you don't hear nothing about that until white people interfered with their way. So if you go back to Africa, they didn't believe in gods and things like this. They believed in every aspect of the life and its special quality to it. Nothing was left out. And then as white people begin to come into play, or at that time they would have just been the giants, because ancient Egypt culture go back far. So they weren't dealing with white people, Menhite. They were dealing with the white giants at that time. We deal with the white people. So it's like when you get to AD times, this is where all the giants were killed off, and all you had left at this point was the remnants, which were white men our height. And this is where the confusion comes from. But when you go to white history, this is where you get gods and lords. See, you have to understand, if you go to Norse mythology, you have 9 different realms of existence. And each realm has beings native to that world. So stay with me. Now, when you're dealing with Norse, you have Vanaheim. Now, Vanaheim is a world, and the beings that live on that world are the Vanir lords. And they're, the kind of beings they are lords. So we live on Earth, and we're Earthlings. So like that. And the kind of beings we are humans. So this is how the Vanir lords are. They live on Vanaheim, therefore they are the Vanir. But the type of being they are is called a lord. Type of being you are is called a human. This is what we call ourselves. They call themselves lords. Then you have Asgard. This is another world out of the 9. And they call themselves the Aesir gods, or the Assyria gods, which is just male or female. Now, they're from Asgard. The type of beings they would be is called gods. They're from Asgard, so they're called Aesirs, or Asgardians. And the type of beings they are called gods. Now you have Alfheim. Alfheim is the world to the beings who are elves. You have Svartalheim. This is the world to the dwarves. The kind of beings they are dwarves. You have Jotunheim. The type of beings that live on Jotunheim are giants. They call themselves the Jotuns because they come from Jotunheim. Just like you're from Earth and you call yourself an Earthling. So follow. And the type of being they are is a giant. Then you have Midgard. And Midgard is Earth. And you know, the Earthlings call themselves humans. Then you have Niflheim, which is the primordial world of darkness and ice. And then you have Muspelheim, which is the primordial world of fire and light. And then you have Helheim. And the goddess Hel lives there. So you have to grasp, this is how you got those names. See, when the giants came long ago, they called themselves what they were. Lords. See, when you're dealing with the Vanaheim, you have the Vanir lords, you have a guy named Freyr. And Freyr was always referred to as Lord. This is why I say the Vanir lords, the type of beings they were lords. Because they always referred to Freyr as a lord. And they always referred to the Asgards as gods. So Odin was referred to as a god. Thor, a god. Now when you're dealing with the Vanir lords, you have Freyr. Mimir, I think. They were referred to as lords. Now, when the giants came here, you had other interferences, like you had those from Asgard coming down here on the rainbow, according to the text of Norse. And they would try to stop the giants from coming here. So this is how you get the gods and the lords intervening with what the giants was doing. And over time, we don't see giants who refer to themselves as lords and gods. All we see is white people. And this is where the confusion comes. Because we like, okay, gods and lords, this is like the invisible ones, the invisible one that owns life. And that's how that confusion happened. But it has nothing to do with truth. Even the giants, when they came, they wouldn't have told man, oh, I'm your god. They just telling them what kind of beings they are. We're gods from Asgard or whatever. We're the Jotun from Jotunheim. So on and so forth. We're the Vanir lords. So whatever, mind you, the Asgardians, the Vanir lords, the Jotuns, they're all giants. But Jotunheim is right on the same realm as Midgard, which is Earth. So this is how the giants come over. And it's a deep thing because a lot of people wonder, when God flooded the earth and everyone was killed off except for Noah, how did the giants resurface again if everybody was killed? Because the giants weren't from here. So more just came. You have to think and have an understanding when you read. But this is how you got all of that. Gods, lords, Nephilim, because those from Jotunheim, when they die, they go to Nephilim. This is where those who live dishonored lives go. So this is how all those words and misconfusions happen, because we don't actually use those words anymore in our vocabulary, unless we're reading ancient texts, and we confuse it, and this is how all the confusion happened. They were basically running the life. Giants came here, they mixed and mingled in. They find the bones now in today's times, but they still don't quite understand. The pieces are not going together. And this is because all of the texts from all civilizations are not being read together, because it's all coming from their own separate perspective or account. The Hebrews are telling their account in their interactions with these beings and their history. In their history, they're the ones that begin to slay these beings. Others have their own history and their own interactions with them. So no one's story is plagiarized in anyone else's. The thing is, this is Earth, and this is why all the stories sound similar, but they're slightly different because of perspective. If you're reading white people's history, they're not going to tell it in the perspective of a Hebrew. The Hebrews were being oppressed by the giants. The giants' history is not going to be told the way the Hebrews is, but it's the same event. So we have to grasp. When you're reading like Norse and Greek mythology, their history always starts with the giants. The Titans, the Olympians, the Jotunheim, the Aesir gods. This is why. And then their text goes into how they begin to mix and mingle in with men. So it's a deep thing you have to grasp. Also, I want to touch up on something in the Bible, because in the Bible they speak on circumcision. And a lot of people don't know why the Hebrew people of ancient times, or the Israelites, was so stronghold on circumcision. The reason why was because of the giants. They understood the giants were not circumcised. They lived a certain way. They did sodomy, meaning when you're giving someone head, this has nothing to do with reproducing. Sex is for reproducing. So if you're giving someone oral sex and then they come, that's sodomy, because that's not normal according to what sex is for. You're not getting anyone pregnant that way. Having anal sex, it's unnatural. It's sodomy because it doesn't lead to reproducing. Having sex man on man, woman on woman, this is why this was all viewed as abominations, because it had nothing to do with the point. And this is how they were living. This is the ways of life they taught men. Making metal into weapons and killing and all these different things. They taught men these things. And in return, men worshipped them because they didn't know this otherwise. And it's a deep thing. This is why the Hebrews were so stronghold on circumcision, because the ancient giants and their remnants, which were white people and all other nationalities who were mixed in with them. So we got to the point where all you had left was the remnants of the giants, which were white people, and then those people with color that were mixed in, had the blood mixed in them also. The Hebrews were supposedly pure blood. They didn't really mix and mingle in with the giants in their civilization. This is why when you see Moses, he's fighting the giants and he's losing people to the cities. This is why when Judah, one of the 12 sons of Israel, married a Canaanite woman, it was frowned upon, because the Canaanite, that was the city of the giants, meaning the giants governed that city. Even if the people there weren't all giants, the giants were there and they governed that city, and the people there lived in the way of the giants, and they mixed and mingled with them. Even if they didn't come out tall and big, they were still one with them. And this is why the Hebrews separated themselves from all of that. So they began to circumcise themselves, because they had an understanding that prior to the giants coming here, men were circumcised already. Men didn't have foreskin. When the giants begin to mingle and mix and mingle in, this is when men begin to get the giant traits, certain little things from the giants, like the foreskin, things like this. So over time they start seeing little signs like, oh, the person may not necessarily be a giant or a white person to be one of them. They may have the blood of them in them. Now in them times they didn't have the technology to look at their genes, so they like, just circumcise yourself, we'll know that way. Because they don't do that. They just live perverted, and nothing matters to them except for building cities and worshipping one another and ruling over the life. That's all their concern was. And it's a deep thing, because if you look into daytimes, it correlates. See, if you go back 500 years ago, the Native Americans of this land, they knew nothing of white people. They knew nothing. All they knew about was the ancient giants of the past that they killed, because they found about 30 giant red-headed skeletons in a cave. I forgot where exactly at in America, but they found this recently. But this was before slavery times. So the giants were still around. Even in AD times, they just hid themselves away in places like America. So it's a deep thing you have to grasp. Now, when the white men came to America, the natives didn't know what they were, who they were. They were familiar with the giants, and the giants were white, but they never seen white men their stature, so they must be regular people. So they treated them the same. But the interesting thing is, the same thing happened again. Meaning, if you go to the beginning of the Bible, when the giants first came to earth, they taught men how to fashion metals, how to live civilized, so to say. Build up cities, and the giants ruled over men as their gods. And everybody on the land worked and built up these cities, and they were given their little share of the life, even though the life was already granted to them and not the giants, because they weren't here. Now, if you go fast forward to slavery times, the remnants of the giants, which are the white people, still move in the same nature. They came to the Native American lands, they taught them things they didn't know, the use of shotguns, things they didn't know otherwise, and then they took over the land and built cities and so on and so forth. And it was a fight to get them out, but we lost. And it's a deep thing you have to grasp. History is repeating itself. The only difference is the giants are just white men now. So you have to grasp, the white man has mostly human DNA. But there's still the remnants of the giants, because you wouldn't have white people here if the giants never came, because they're white. So it's a deep thing you have to grasp. The giants were albino. This is why Hitler was looking for white, blonde-haired people, because he understood we are all the remnants of the ancient giants, even some black people. So when you see how white people came to America, now all the black people on the American lands, they have white blood in them. We begin to look whiter. Mexicans are no longer dark-skinned. They like white complexion and straight-haired. Mexicans used to have Brillo and be brown. That's why Mexicans are called the Browns. So it's a deep thing you got to grasp. We was called the Coppers. You had all different types of people, but nobody was white. Next thing you know, Mexicans begin to look white. Black people begin to look like Beyonce. And this is how that happened. From mixing and mingling with the giants becoming white people. I don't want to say becoming, because it sounds like a movie, like they transform, but just overbreeding. You know, they losing the way of themselves by mixing and mingling in with man. But the nature's still the same. They're still white. And the nature's still the same, so you see the same things happening. White people run the earth. I'm not saying they all do, but whoever runs the earth is white. Queen Elizabeth knows everything I'm saying. Certain white people, certain groups of white people who are high in stature, they know exactly what I'm talking about. This is how they're in that position. This is how whites are privileged, the same way the giants and the descendants of them were privileged in the past. They reigned here as gods and got all the wealth and all the praise. And they let men believe they were gods and all this weird stuff. And the same thing happened. The white people came and they gave us their gods, which is their ancient descendant, which is their ancient ancestors. So I see why they hold them at high regards and they say God and all this stuff and Lord. It's granted why they hold it on high regards, but that has nothing to do with us. Those ancient giant lords and gods that came here and ruled over us, they ain't our ancestors. They're theirs. And they placed them on us, and they got us sitting here worshipping the oppressor. It's like I told y'all. Whoever is born into the life, they are equal in one with all other living things in the life, and they get their share just by being a part of life. There's enough space for everyone in